Hello and welcome to another episode of the Unstarving Musician. I am Robonzo. How are you? Where are you? What are you wearing? I really do want to know. Let me know. Send me a message. I'm moving this week and it's been kind of busy. Not just any move, but a move into a home that Sammy and I built just for us. So lots of things happening. The only other mention I have is that my band, which goes by the name Robonzo, yeah, that's me, that's my band, will be at Moser Café Culture in Querétaro, July 10, which is in a couple of weeks. I'm excited to play some new songs with the guys, including one of my own. Okay, let's get right into it, shall we? My guest today is Lynz Crichton. This is her fourth time on the show, which puts her in rare company. She's a singer-songwriter based in Nottingham, England, and the creator of Music Marketing Method, a program for independent musicians that I've been part of myself. What prompted this conversation was an email she sent recently. The subject line was something like, "Before you walk away from your music." In it, she shared a note from a musician who was years in. He played proper gigs, had good music, and, he's the real deal. He wrote to tell her he'd started drafting the goodbye message for his website, which saddened Lynz, of course. Not because he couldn't play anymore, because his songs weren't good, but because everything around the music had ground him down. When I read the email, I knew I needed to talk to her about it. I've heard versions of this story before and have my own version of the same story. Lynz made a distinction in that email I kept coming back to. She separated weariness from failure. They're not the same thing. So that's where we start. We talk about what she's been seeing in her work with musicians lately, including a service she's been running called the Power Hour. We get into how Music Marketing Method has evolved, why she's moved towards smaller bite-size offerings, and where most of her musician income actually comes from. We also talk about the part most musicians don't want to hear. The problem usually isn't the music, it's the relationship with the business side, the mindset. What's the next step? The question we forget to ask when we're drowning in everything we think we should be doing. Lynz is one of the most generous, clear-headed people in this space that I know. I always come away from our conversations a little less weary myself, and she's just such a joy to talk to. Okay, so here's me speaking with Lynz Crichton.
So good to hear from you.
Likewise.
Always is, but when I saw your email, I was like, oh, that's such an interesting proposition and interesting take, because I've actually just been rereading over the email in particular that I think made me write that email, and the one that you responded to in particular, and it still makes my heart so sad. But also just the amount of power hours that I've been doing over the past few weeks just suggests to me that musicians are really feeling stuck at the moment.
Well, a couple things. The industry's hardening, continues to harden, but also, this has been going on for a while, but the massively low barrier to entry, kind of brings us all in, and some of us are innately sort of programmed for the type of independent and take control and all this stuff, and some of us not as much. So I just imagine that has to be common. And I was thinking about my own back and forths in my head, which I laugh about most of the time. But as an example, every time I do one of these kind of newer gigs where I'm fronting the band, I'm like, do I need to do this anymore?
Oh,
and then I'm like, that's so silly. It's just.
What makes you think that?
Well, it's just a few things. It's all silly, but some of it is like, does anybody want to see this old guy up there doing that? And also, I'm doing a repertoire that's very self-serving is not the word I'm looking. Self-indulgent, and trying to share that with people. So that limits the scope of what we can do. And then there's just kind of the work side of it, but I don't know. I think it's kind of just my programming, and I also know that a lot of people just sort of have this back and forth in their head about anything they do, right? Like they're confident about what they're doing, and they're going to keep doing it, and then for no sensible reason, they're like, "What am I doing?"
I couldn't agree more. I think I almost wish that it was possible to share a bit more about the stories and conversations that I've had with some of these musicians over even the ones over the past few weeks, because I mean, I've spoken to someone who is a 3-time Emmy winning music producer, and he's calling me going, Lynz, where do I get my next gig from? I'm like, are you serious? And there's so much mindset stuff around that where he's like, I I just I just don't think anybody wants to hear from me anymore. Like, I'm an old guy. And I'm like, oh, just talking to him for 5 or 10 minutes, and the kind of life stories and experience that he's talking to me about. And listen, none of it is, I mean, there's ups, but oh boy, there's downs. But that's what people want to hear. Like, that's what people want to know about. And he's there going, oh, nobody's going to want to hear from this old dog. And I'm like, are you kidding me? There's gold in what you've just been talking to me about for the last 5 or 10 minutes. There's people want to, you could peel back the curtain on the music industry in ways that other people could never even dream of doing. And yet you're sitting here talking to me about this old dog and the fact that nobody wants to listen to me. And, there's so many musicians that are coming to me with stories like this. I'm just like, I'm blown away.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, the old dog thing's funny too. I spoke to a guy yesterday he's got to be in the realm of my age, and he's mostly been in the label business, but he is mostly in the publishing business these days, and he's got this incredible podcast that I'm looking for. I haven't listened to yet, but I was looking at what he's doing because he's a educator at Berkeley and NYU and Wesleyan, right? And so he was sharing with me as we talked about his podcast that he has a younger generation that really doesn't have the same breadth of knowledge about the history of pop music. So he's bringing in all these incredible names to help, develop those stories. It was originally for his students, but he's created it, turned it into a podcast. But anyway, he was one of the most
That's so cool.
well-spoken and sort of like knowledgeable and succinct people I've ever talked to. But he's an older guy, but I'm sure even he, for all of his confidence, has those moments,
Yeah, absolutely.
So last time we spoke, which by the way has been like, well, not since the last time we spoke, but last time we spoke for the podcast has been almost 5 years, which I couldn't believe. Right?
Holy guacamole.
I know. Well, that was episode 215. Now this will surpass 350 when it's released.
Oh my gosh. This is from the guy who said I'm stopping at 300, right?
Yeah. I'm taking a break is what I said. That's what I publicly said. But back then, music marketing method was still pretty new. Where's the program now? Is it more or less the same, or has it evolved based on what you've learned from students or something else?
I mean, it's evolved a few different times. One thing that was quite clear to me from the get-go is that certainly with social media, that landscape changes all the time. So it's quite tricky. It's a bit like trying to keep up with AI now. It's so difficult to keep on top of where things are going. So yes, music marketing method has iterated many times in various different ways. But one thing that I think I kind of realized probably 2 or 3 years ago, but it's been a kind of gradual sort of segue, if you like, is that people don't want, like in 2020, 2021, that kind of time, everybody was at home and they wanted to learn this new thing. And so there was an appetite there for people to kind of get into a big new course or thing or something to kind of teach themselves and have that element of the coaching with it. But sort of over the past few years, I think people have become a bit tired of it. They want sort of smaller bite-sized things that they can get quicker wins with. And I also feel like musicians and me, if I'm absolutely honest, are a bit tired of the treadmill of algorithms and social media, and I completely get it. And so I thought to myself, well, I look at my own music business. Where am I earning the most money? Not that it's about money all the time, by the way, but if we want to be, remunerated for the work that we put in, where is that most successful for me? And so I started thinking about house concerts were a great thing. Remote session work was a great thing. Patreon has been a great thing for me. Doing mini crowdfunds in the past has been a great thing. And I thought, hang on a minute, for any of those things, I don't even need social media. I don't need it. So why is everybody, well, why am I, even with Music Marketing Method, kind of, I'm selling a thing on the front end of it, which is find and grow your audience. But really on the back end, what I really want to teach people is how to monetize their music better. And so what I realized is, and in answer to your question about like where's Music Marketing Method at, it still exists. It's still in a rough format of probably from last time you logged in, albeit with minor changes, but you can still get access to it. People can still purchase it if they want to, like as a big thing. But there's also ways of just buying a little piece of it now. So people can just buy, access to the house concerts for musicians piece, or they can just buy, I've created something called Slay Your Holiday Sales, which basically is teaching people how to create really cool different digital or physical products in their business. So like on the run up to Christmas, when lots of people want to spend money, it's how do musicians kind of leverage that, and how can you create experiences that people are actually going to want to buy. So that's another kind of like mini standalone thing that you can buy into. So kind of what I'm doing now is breaking off bits of Music Marketing Method so that people can kind of get access to the bits of it that they want and leave the bits that they don't. Hopefully that wasn't rambling too much and I did answer your question, but I think I did.
Yeah, you did. And I'm reminded now that one of the big things that caught my attention in the Matt email was the power hour concept, and something you just said reminded me, and that's like taking bits and pieces of what you had originally created, because I was like, oh, I suppose I could do that. That's actually a great idea for anyone,
Yes.
and not even
Well,
speaking specifically about the power hour product, but just like any piece of something, right?
absolutely. And that's been one of the real joyful things as well about doing these power hours is that I get to speak one on one with loads of musicians now. Each and every one of them is coming to me with a different focus of what they want to concentrate on. Um, and so it's lovely to be able to go deep for that 1 hour just on that one person. And the feedback that I've received so far has been so cool because they're like, I just needed that one person who knows what this is about, and I needed to bounce off someone. And I think that's why there's been such a great take up of power hours, because um, whether somebody wants to talk about growing their audience, whether somebody wants to talk about mindset stuff, whether somebody wants to talk about building their website, doing house concerts, launching a Patreon, like you can come with whatever thing you want, and it's all about you for that 1 hour. And I think people are really grateful and enjoying the fact that somebody's there to listen to them. They understand what you're going through. They've been through it themselves, and they're willing to just spend an hour getting all the alphabety spaghetti out of their brain onto the table, letting it drip all over the floor, and then we kind of put a plan together out of that. And it's just been really fun.
I can imagine. You kind of answered one question I was going to start with about Matt's email in kind of setting the backdrop of our deciding to speak to each other, but you drew a line in that email between weariness and failure. Walk me through why that distinction matters and what musicians miss when they sort of combine or collapse the two together.
I felt such a heaviness reading through poor Matt's email. So just for context for people listening, Matt is a lovely musician in my email community. I was trying to kind of explain and describe what these power hours could be and how I can help out and all these different things. And Matt just emailed me back and he gave me this story about where he's currently at. And the way that he kind of started the email was to kind of tell me, and I'm just going to open the email now. Let's just see. So I've been fortunate to be able to indulge my hopes and dreams to capture people with my songs and make meaningful music, but the numbers and the situation don't lie. So today I planned a goodbye message for the website. I mean, that is so finite. Now he talks about this, he's planning it now, but he's talking about it as like, my my .com and my website, they run out in January 2028, but I'm thinking about doing, starting this off now so that it's going to be ready. And I just thought, wow, rather than putting all your time and energy into the joy of making music and moving that forward and knocking on other doors and trying out other ideas and not giving up, he's actually putting his time and effort, and he thinks that's better spent writing a goodbye letter. That's what made me feel so sad. But he goes into, various reasons why that is. Part of it is, in the UK, he was doing like lots of festivals. People were messing him about. He was supposed to share a drum kit with another band, but then they forgot to bring it. And, all these different things that kind of got to this point of him feeling just so weary, war weary, and also that it had all been a failure because he wasn't making money out of this. He didn't feel like it was going anywhere. He was putting all this effort in. And yeah, I just thought, well, whilst I understand all of that, I really do, and I know that lots of musicians listening will feel similar. We wake up every day with music in our DNA, it's in our bones. We just want to feel that joy and spark of making music. And then actually what we're supposed to be doing nowadays is doing the website, doing the socials, getting the next paycheck coming in, like all the things. And it does make you feel just really, really tired after a while. Matt and I had a bit of a back and forth exchange. I tried to bring him round, but I think his mind was made up. And, I don't blame him. But I just kind of, I think you asked about what was the distinction between weariness and failure. I would say weariness is obviously the absolute exhaustion of trying your hardest every single day and just feeling like you're not getting anywhere. But that does not equate to failure, because there's so many ways that you can have that, even if it's the glimmer of success in your music business. We might just have to change our approach, go back to what our real goals are, try and just reassess what we're aiming for, and then kind of go again. But I do appreciate that for some people, they just feel like, no, the end is nigh, I can't do this anymore, I'm out.
Yeah, sure. The guy I spoke to yesterday that I was talking about, who was started out mostly in the business of being with the label and now does publishing, had mentioned, because I was trying to distill things down to the indie artist, which I'm always trying to do, and he obviously works in a different world. And many times when I asked him to sort of bring some concepts into that world, he mentioned knowing what your goals are. Like, that was so important as an artist,
I remember, on Q&As that you and I have been on, and people are asking me various different questions, and should I be doing this, should I be doing that? And I always have to come back to, what are your goals? Like, we don't get into a car and then have no idea where we're heading to and just like randomly drive around all the time. But that seems to be sometimes what musicians tend to do. Like, they think they should be growing their followers. But then when I say to someone, why are you growing your followers? And they go, oh, well, because I want to get my music out to more people. Why do you want to get your music out to more people? Oh, well, because I want to, earn more money. Well, there's a gap there already. Why are you equating having more followers on social media to earning more? That's not always the case. You need to go deeper with the audience that you currently have. It's funny. Yeah, coming back to goals is always something that musicians and anybody else in life as well, but definitely musicians needs to do as a consistent thing. And those goalposts are allowed to move, but you've got to be clear on what the goal is.
Of all those things that we've talked about them, Matt, you mentioned Matt talking about these various things that beat him down. And I know from seeing the email story that you shared, that there's things like rejections, disorganized festivals, promoters treating musicians as an inconvenience, and the social media treadmill, as you said. You answered a lot of this, but I suppose I should ask this part anyway, but do you see one as doing the most damage, and is it the one musicians themselves name first?
Do I see a particular part of the music industry doing the most damage, you mean?
Or like pain points doing damage, self-inflicted or otherwise?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think some people are still holding on to the old trope of what the music industry is a little bit, where they think, A, I'm either going to get signed by a label and that is my version of success, or B, I'm going to get a load of followers on social media and that is my version of success. Those two things don't equal success necessarily. And also, I think by believing those things, people are actually missing where the opportunities really do lie for musicians nowadays. But having said that, rather than it being something that musicians are inflicting on themselves, I do think that there is, and I know this for sure in the UK, and I'm pretty sure it's in the US as well, and probably worldwide, but there is a big gap between an independent musician kind of starting out grassroots level and then making that big leap to somebody who is supported by, and I'm going to say, a decent label. I know there's lots and lots of different labels out there, big and small, but this support and help for musicians between those two stages, there just seems to be a massive gap. There's very little funding left for people. There's very little space to just play and try and experiment and even get on stages nowadays. It's just that it's really, really difficult. Venues are closing left, right, and centre. I get it's really difficult. So I don't just think that it's self-inflicted. I think it is a bit of both, a bit of sort of nature nurture.
Yeah, it's a crazy cycle. I noticed you mentioned the things that made you the most money, and all of them seem to live outside of whether you had social media followers or spent much time these days on it. They were like house concerts, Patreon, fundraising, things like that. But anyway, the first and maybe arguably the second sort of help work around the problem of shrinking play spaces, the shrinking number of play spaces. It's funny that you brought it up too. It's so funny. I've really, for the first time after all these years of doing the podcast, I've really gotten better recently, and hopefully I will keep the trend up of creating content ahead of time. I was very comfortably doing it. Yeah, I was very comfortably just doing it on a weekly basis, but I was reminded, I don't know why, but I was just reminded, like, this could be a problem. And when I was starting out, it really was. It's less so now, but so anyway, that all to say that I have created two pieces, one for the newsletter and one for the specific podcast episode revisiting house concerts. So it was interesting that it was like kind of the first thing you brought up.
I mean, I think it's a great thing to prep content ahead of time, for sure. I know a lot of people tend to be so excited about getting the music out or launching whatever it is that they're launching, and they kind of go, oh, well, I'll talk about it. I've got loads of things I can talk about, and then by day 3 they've run out of ideas, or none of it. There's no story arc to it, or they just the thing that grinds my gears is when I see a musician comes and says, Lynz, I need your help. This isn't working. What am I doing wrong? And I go to their social media and they've just posted, I don't know, either a reel or a photo or something, and there's no description. I go to their YouTube, there's like no description, no titles, no context or anything of what they're doing. And I'm like, how am I, if I have just come by your website or your your socials, and I want to find out more about you, and you've just posted that. How on earth am I supposed to know what kind of music you do, what this is for, what the story is behind it, why do you make music? Like, all of those things need to be addressed in content. And if, as you quite rightly say, you can create some of this stuff ahead of time, oh my gosh, that saves you so much stress when releasing something. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, prepping ahead of time, really, really good. But yeah, are you going to do some house concerts too? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I hope to do more. I'm just for the content creators that are listening, and I know there's a lot of them among musicians and elsewhere, but the one thing that's dramatically helped, I was still like not really seeing the forest for the trees, an expression I probably have never used in my lifetime, but um, I've created so much content, and just for instance, if I take the podcast interviews, now I have tons of stuff to mine through and with transcripts. I mean,
Yeah.
tons. I could probably never record another episode and keep writing for months and months.
Yep, definitely.
So that's been really great. And house concerts is just something I really love, and I believe that in mining, the reason it came back, it's sort of like a perennial topic with me, but is that the right word when something comes back every year? But
Yeah, let's go with that.
yeah, but in mining some of the past transcripts, that was one of the topic ideas that I listed. So yeah, I just went ahead and refined and added, some new things I've learned and experiences that I've had, and I certainly do hope to do some more. I really would like to start hosting them at my new place when it's done. It's going to be done pretty soon. Um,
That would be so cool.
yeah, it would be fun, and we'll maybe sort of help create a needed ecosystem. It's not something that's prevalent here. There's like one guy that I know of that has done them in the past, and he's on hiatus with them because they just got a little unwieldy for him.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So that's
Is that
certainly
somebody who's hosting them rather
he
than playing them?
he has hosted them, yeah,
Yeah.
and he could and should be playing them, but there's just not a lot of opportunity. So what he's done is actually like he'll host one and he'll um, set it up so that he can play a song two or three at the beginning of it, and then have his guest artist play, which has been pretty cool,
Oh, that is really
actually,
cool.
and a little and unconventional, but pretty cool.
No, it's really, really good. I just love the concept of house concerts, and it's not quite as prevalent in the UK as it is over in the US. But
Okay.
I understand. Well, I mean, what do people say about the British? Like, we have a very stiff upper lip, and people would think, "Oh my gosh, no, I don't want you to play that instrument 3 feet from my face. That would be just very uncomfortable for me." But having said that, no, I think house concerts are amazing, but partly because everybody wins. Obviously, the musicians win because they get to share their amazing zone of genius with a room of, an intimate space with a room of people who are listening, who want to buy their merch afterwards, who want to tell their stories back to that musician. Like, it's just such a wonderful, magical thing. But also, it's great for the hosts because they get to share this cool experience with their friends. But you can also take that outside of the house, as the house concerts. We can do this in like venues locally. It doesn't have to be like the theatre or whatever. It can be, I mean, I think in the UK, like village halls or old like Victorian mills or whatever we've got over here, like just really cool spaces that also need a little bit of love and attention and possibly an influx of um, money coming in to look after it. Like, I don't know why there aren't more of those kind of house concert series that get staged in venues like that, or there's like a community interest going, because I think people in a local area, they want entertainment on their doorstep. They don't necessarily want to go to the local dodgy bar or whatever. That they want some kind of different experience and entertainment on their doorstep. So, local people will win. The musicians win because they get to go from one house concert in inverted commas to the next. I just think house, and also really a big thing about it as well is that musicians get to grow their audiences from house concerts as well. So, even if it's somebody in their close circle of friends that you could say, well, or family, friends, whatever, you could host a house concert and I will come and play. That person who's doing the hosting is inviting 20, 30, 50 of their friends, some of whom don't know this musician. So, each house concert begets another house concert, begets another 30, 50 fans each time. It's just such a win-win all round.
Yeah, totally. And the first one that I did here in Querétaro, where I live, was a cafe, and I approached them about it was a neighbor who was running a cafe in the area, a small, really nice one, and I approached her about having a private event and could be modeled for like customer appreciation if she wanted, and we talked about the different ways of doing it. And it was basically a house concert in her cafe after hours. And I keep
Exactly.
telling myself I need to pitch this to more local businesses for the reasons that you cited. And so, one, this was just because it was such low-hanging fruit, but I need to get a little more bold. But I approached an obvious candidate, a recording and rehearsal studio, and
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, great. Well, it turns out they
Yeah.
actually host live entertainment there. They have kind of a little series, so they sort of have their own little house concert series. They do it as a ticketed thing, but they were totally amenable to doing the donation-based model if we wanted to do
Yeah.
that instead. So, yeah, it's something.
It's such a good idea.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
mean, so those two things sound amazing. There's also ways that you could or musicians could um, sort of tap in to local businesses in a different way. So, as an example, I know lots of people in the States will live close to wineries. So, one thing you could do is approach the winery and say, I will come and do effectively what is a house concert, but in your winery. But then, during this time and this time, maybe we could do like actual wine tasting. So it's not so much as the winery is open, people are coming to meet their friends just to drink in your background music. It's very much the artist is a draw, but the winery, you as an artist can leverage the inbuilt audience that comes with that winery, because the winery is going to have like an email list and socials and whatever. So, that's another thing that you can do, is to approach businesses to kind of collaborate with in that way.
Yeah, totally. Thinking more again about the Matt email.
Yeah.
Is there a pattern in the thing musicians think is their problem versus the thing you actually identify as their problem in that hour? I'm imagining yes, based on some conversation we've already had, but conversations we've had in the past. But what has been your
Yeah.
observation?
So connecting Matt's story to a lot of the others is that the problem is almost never the music. It's the relationship that the music has with the business side of music, or with visibility, or with asking, or with showing up, or with the idea that they deserve to be seen, or mindset. Those tend to be the main things that people have got a problem with. And when you really dig, and I ask, why do you make music? Why are you doing this? Why now? I keep asking why. We always get to the crux of it in the end. And it's one of those things.
That makes sense.
Mm.
I mean, I could hear myself talk about the things that might beat me down or get the voice, the voice in my head going about whether I should keep doing it. It's all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been trying my darndest to help independent musicians think about the business side in a different way and how to manage it. But when you look at all the things that you really need to do to meet whatever your goals are, it's a lot.
That is true. But then what I would say to that is, if ever I'm feeling overwhelmed, which is quite often because we all have so much to do, as you say, I just think, what is my next step? I am not going to think beyond that. I know I've got this I just said we want these goals, these things in the distance that we're aiming for. That's fine. But then we need to reverse engineer the steps to get there. What is my next step? And I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to bite that one off, and then I'll reassess. Because I think if we think too much about all the things we've got to do, it does get overwhelming. It does get heavy. It does get draining, as Matt said. And then you kind of start thinking, what is the point in all of this? The other thing I would say is that if we are spending more than 50% of our time, or whatever percentage you want to call it, but too much of our time on the business side of things, then we are forgetting the joy that we started making music for. We all started making music because it was joyful and we got that buzz of making music. If we're losing that, then what are we doing it for? We need to get back to the joy and even forget about the business stuff for a while. Can you believe I am even saying this? Forget about the business side of things. This is what I help people with. But genuinely, if we're not feeling joy with what we're doing, then what is the point?
Yeah, it's funny you answered the way you did because I've been doing this a lot more lately. Like, okay, what do I need to do next? And if I have some downtime, is the next thing the best thing? Depending if I have some limited downtime, is the next thing the best thing to work on, or can I work on a piece of something else that won't require so much deep work, as they say? But as a consequence of doing that, I have been realizing I can't finish this if I'm trying to do often two different projects in the same day. Well, I'm sure that
Oh
makes
gosh.
perfect sense to a lot of people. But,
Yeah.
if you think like I have a tendency to do that, I'll spend 3 hours on this and 3 hours on that today. But that only works if the 3 hours on this gets done in 3 hours. But if it doesn't, then there's a problem. So, yeah, I've found myself thinking a lot more about what's the next thing and also realizing that next thing's not going to get done very quickly if I don't just stick to that one thing until it is done. And that sometimes means I got to push something down the week a little bit
Yeah,
or
100%.
decide if I should be working on that thing.
This reminds me actually of, so I'm working with a musician at the moment on like a sort of weekly basis. We check in every Monday. This musician tells me what they did last week, and then we kind of sort of make a plan of these are the three things that you're going to do this week. And partly we got into this rhythm because he wanted to work with me as partly an accountability thing, but he was like, Lynz, I've got all these ideas. I don't know which one shall I go with first. And honestly, every call we go on, this guy is like, and I could do this, and I could do this, and but I really want to do this. And I'm like, whoa, you are scattergunning in so many different directions. This is now the one thing I want you to do by next week. And so we got into this rhythm where at the end of every call, he'd go and he'd have this one thing that he needed to do that week. And then we would reassess the next week. And it was working for a while and it was great. But the problem was, well, two things. First of all, I think we got to a point where he'd lost the joy because he was so focused on the to-do list and getting this one thing done each week that he kind of lost that joy. But also the overwhelm was creeping back in as well because he was thinking, I don't just want to do one thing, I want to do three things. But then when I take away my three things, really it turns into five things. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, he completely fell off the wagon. And so what we did at that point is I said, what one thing can you do this week that is going to bring you joy? This is not, what thing in my website am I going to change? What thing in my logo am I going to do? What thing am I like? None of that stuff. What joyful thing can you do this week that you're not going to think, I don't want to open my laptop for this. Like I just don't want to do it. What thing is going to really like give you that butterfly feeling in your tummy? Like, yes, I want to do it just because it's joyful. And so what ended up happening is he got into such a wonderful flow just by finishing tracks. And he felt such a sense of satisfaction. There was no one thing this week, three things this week. It was simply just, I'm going to work on that track. And what ended up happening was he got into such a flow that he's now like two or three tracks sort of ahead of himself. And now we can, well, I was going to say, now we can start thinking about the strategy of how we're going to release it and getting back into that to do stuff. But at the moment, you know what? We don't even want to go there. We just want to keep making music and kind of stacking that up. And I said to him the other day, do you know what? Sometimes this works in seasons. Sometimes we just need to make more music because that is our zone of genius and that is what we do. And then when you get to a place where you're like, I've got 10 tracks, I've got 20 tracks, whatever that is, a sensible number, whatever that means to you, then you can start thinking, okay, well, I'm making all this music, but I'm not actually releasing it to the world. So how could I go about doing that now? And then you get excited because you're like, rather than being on this hamster wheel of to do, one track, release it, do all these jobs, the next track, release it, do all these jobs, it just becomes like a, right, let's take this joyful tune that I did and how can we make the story about it? How can we enthuse other people about it? Because that's the thing as well. Like, we're supposed to be serving our audience. We're supposed to be making music to make their day feel better. So how can we kind of connect that gap as well? And so I just thought, because of what you just said, that was just an interesting thing that popped into my head where I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, find more joy.
Yes. I've spoken to two artists that come to mind, and they're kind of repeat offenders like yourself, in meaning that they've been on the podcast more than once, and they have spoken to me specifically about, and they don't even know each other, but about having sort of seasons or seasonal work that they do, because there's like a life cycle to the different things, like releasing music, and there are these little seasons within all of that, because it requires a lot of stuff that is outside of the recording and the, writing and those things. So it makes a lot of sense what you just said.
Absolutely.
You've said in the past that you don't go after Spotify streams because you can make a good living from a relatively small audience, which I agree with, and I think a number of others do. But when a Power Hour client comes in chasing streaming numbers, how do you redirect them, or do you?
Oh, that's a great question. I think if a Power Hour person came in chasing Spotify streams, I would be asking what the goal is. So, do they want to get bigger streams because it's a vanity metric thing, or do they want to get streams because they think it's a stepping stone to something else? I.e., I can't get on these types of festivals that I want to play at if I haven't got big Spotify streams. Then okay, I see it's a stepping stone to something else. But if it's well, I want to get loads of numbers because that's how I want to earn my money, I'm like, there are better ways of doing that. So then that might need a redirect, depends. I don't try and redirect people to what I think they should be doing, because I always say, you are in the driving seat. This is your music career. You can choose, but we can definitely bounce the idea, and I can try and keep peeling away the layers to really find what the issues are and why you want to do this stuff, and then we can make a plan out of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, we get back to the whole, like, what is your goal here?
Yeah. I mean, I've even started doing some coaching outside of the music industry with businesses, and I'm kind of in this other coaching space thing that's all about all sorts of different businesses, not music related. And I was invited to kind of be in the hot seat of chairing this coaching call with all these, like really high-powered business people the other day, and even like my imposter syndrome was going haywire, let me tell you. Anyway, the really interesting thing was, do you know how many times I found myself on that call asking them, what is your goal? Because they are doing the exact same thing. They are scattergunning. They are bringing all the ideas to the table. They're so excited about all of them. And yet, what are we doing this for? Like, where are you going? It's just such a fundamental question for everybody. What is your goal, and how are you going to get there? It's simple.
Yeah,
not easy, but simple.
I saw in one of your emails that you were touching a new audience in business owners, and you probably alluded to it, but I certainly thought to myself, their problems are exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they've all got to, do the website, do the marketing, get the clients in, or source the payments. Like, they have to do all of those things just like we do. It's just a different product.
I had a professional journalist on the podcast. He's been on a couple of times, and
he has spent most of his career writing books about famous artists and their kind of wealth machine, how that all works, and largely in the hip hop genre, I guess would be fair to say. But he had this great saying a while back that, and I suppose he maybe co-opted it, but and he said that we're all musicians now, and he was talking about a time when the media space started really fragmenting, but he was acutely aware of this whole plight that we talk about on a fairly regular basis with musicians and artists and audience capture and, well, sorry, that's probably not the right phrase, but owning your audience and all these different
Yeah.
things. But I always loved his expression, and you just proved it in sharing your experiences with small business owners. They have the same problems.
Yeah.
You've always been strong on own your data and email lists over social. So in this year, 2026, with short form
Yep.
video and AI reshaping discovery, has the advice changed at all, or is it more true than ever?
I think it's more true than ever because trying to get people's attention and also trying to get them to take an action on social media is becoming just more and more difficult. It's more and more difficult to cut through the noise. It's more and more difficult to get your message out there. But when you own an email list, you can not only keep reaching that person time and time again, but you can deepen the relationship with them. And I think certainly in the advent of AI, where musicians can really win at the moment is to do that and deepen a relationship as opposed to go wide and try and get. Obviously, we need to grow our audiences in some way. It doesn't have to be by the thousands, or it doesn't have to be that we go viral. If that happens, great, cherry on the top, brilliant. But I think we need to kind of remember more than ever that we need to look after the people that are already in our ecosystem and orbit, and certainly the people on your email list are people who have heard your music already and opted in to being on your email list, or as I like to call it, in your community. And so how are you going to serve those people? So yeah, I think it's more important than ever.
I agree. I just wanted to hear you say it.
You knew I was going to say that anyway.
Of course. Yeah. I just think it's always something that I think it's come more into focus for a lot of people, and that focus keeps growing, but it's never a bad thing to hear someone articulate it the way that you do, or the way that anyone does, to help sort of drive the point home at a critical moment for someone.
I think one thing that people possibly forget to talk about on podcasts like this, though, and forgive me if you have had conversations with people, but I just want to kind of, remind or just touch on the point that maybe for some musicians it's really difficult, because you could say, well, the email list is really important, and they're sitting there going, but how do I get people on my email list? And that is where the social media side of things can help. But I would also say that being as personable as possible and not just blasting on social media, but really conversing and being social on social media, which, yes, is time consuming, but it works. Because if you sit there with an email list and you're thinking, well, I've got an email list and I'm trying, but nobody's joining, well, how are you literally inviting people to come onto that email list? So that's where you need to get a little bit more clear and structured in the content that you're posting out, and thinking, I'm not just posting for posting's sake. I'm doing it because I want to share something about myself, and then if people like it, I invite them to come onto my email list. And that can often happen in the direct messages, or just in open conversations on social media. But you need to build that relationship there first to get them off social media and onto your list. So I just wanted to kind of like connect that dot, if that was necessary at all.
Yeah, that's good. And I tend to focus on thinking very strategically and trying to refine your process in the real world, because and it's because I play places and I talk to and have a lot of friends that perform, and we have to be, well, how do you grow your email list, as I think you might have said, and one of them is one of the answers is one sign up at a time. And
Yeah.
so making it easy for people to do that and having that as like one of your top priorities for every show you play, you really have to
Oh
think
yeah.
about how are you going to do that. And that's,
Yeah.
one of the beautiful things about house concerts, as you know, because, these are new prospective community people who will sign up. And it does take some planning, but, and I've been thinking a lot about it. I've seen people who will have the opportunity and they don't seize it. And I'm guilty of it too. Like I've been thinking a lot about this next couple of shows I have coming up and how to make it easier and more sort of front and center for people, yet still kind of passive, if you will, or not like so aggressive. And certainly just like connecting with the audience off the stage too as much as you can, just like if you were at a house concert. That helps too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any gig that you go to, you should always be looking at how can I get as many of these people here as possible on my email list.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is there a point in a career where, in your honest assessment, quitting is the right call? And how do you talk to someone who's there versus someone who's just weary?
Never. No, joking. um, no. I think if the joy and the spark has well and truly gone, then of course, if it does not feel joyful at all to you, there's no avenue that you haven't tried or you haven't sought help and a bit of support, maybe. Yeah, of course.
As a nice example, it's brought me to the point, at least for now, I try to say never, but I have decided to stop taking the drum set out to venues and playing drums because it's just something that I don't get as much payback from the joy factor, the fun factors I do with other facets of music. Does that mean I'm going to stop playing drums? No, I'm just not going to take it out to venues and play drums for other people or bands that I'm in. And that's probably one of
Is it? Sorry, I was just going to say, is it specific like with the load in or something like that you feel like, oh gosh, I've got to go and take all this gear again? Or is it just that the actual act of playing the drums is not as joyful for you on stage?
Well, I was saying it was, and thinking to myself, a lot of this is there's a lot of physicality to getting there, doing the thing, and then getting back home with the gear, right? I don't have roadies. And, but there's more to, I mean, well, and it's sort of a cost benefit, I guess is the best phrase I can use, but like you weigh how you feel about that versus what you're getting back from it, like emotionally
Yes.
and everything, then that's part of it for sure. And I think maybe I'm still sort of thinking about why is that? Because I think, it tends to upset a lot of people when I tell them that that's where I'm at. But some of it is I've been doing it for 30, 40 years, and I think it's just time for something a little new, and that's what fronting and performing has been doing for me. But I mean, I'm staring at my drum set right now. It's all set up, or I should say partially, because we're going to be moving pretty soon, and it'll be set back up again and set up for recording, and who knows? Never say never. Maybe I'll take it out again one day.
Never say never, but I love the fact that you've just said fronting this band, and I mean, I presume by that you mean you're like being lead singer and doing that kind of stuff instead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, how cool is that you're finding joy in you're still doing music, you're still on stage, you're still connecting with people, you're still sharing music, but you're just doing it in a different way. I think that's brilliant.
That's what I got to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
If someone listening can't book a power hour right now, but recognizes themselves in Matt's story, what are 2 or 3 things they could do this week to start separating weariness from feelings of failure on their own?
One of the things that they could do is to join a community of other musicians, whether that be in a Facebook group, whether that be local people like in real life, starting some kind of local musician group or something. Because I just think just talking about these things, like a problem shared is a problem halved. People can bounce ideas off each other, find different ways of doing things, find little shortcuts or, I don't know, nooks and crannies that they're like, oh, I never thought about it like that, or oh, I've never tried that way, or whatever. And I just think that camaraderie sometimes is missing for musicians because we tend to do everything in isolation. So if people can't, afford a power hour or anything like that, where it's kind of like one-on-one focused attention on you, where you can bring your questions and we'll thrash something out together, then maybe create or find other musicians locally to you to just go and have a cup of coffee together, hang, chat, get the alphabet spaghetti out again, just do it in a different way. The other thing I would say is kind of what we talked about before, where you just look at what your goal is, where you're heading, and just take the one next step. Try each time you are focusing on your music to not get overwhelmed. I know that's easier said than done, but that's where the just one next step comes from. And also do things, if you feel yourself you're in a real weary rut, just take the pressure off completely and just do one thing that brings you joy.
I make sure that most afternoons, it's definitely a Monday through Friday thing. Now, that doesn't mean sometimes it gets disrupted by the unexpected, but to rehearse for an upcoming gig, which means I'm singing. Or maybe I was playing drums, like I did do my last performance with the drum set outside of my home last month. And so, that doing that, even though it's all sort of like structured and disciplined stuff, but it does bring joy, and it brings me a real sense of accomplishment. But so, yeah, one has to find something, something that will bring them joy.
I love that.
What's one thing you've changed your mind about in the last couple of years around independent musicians, or how independent musicians? It's so funny. I struggle on saying the word musician. Like a speech impediment suddenly sets in. About how they should be building their careers.
Ooh, what's something that's changed?
Yeah, in your mind in the last couple of years.
Well, that's a really interesting question. What has changed? I think there was a bit of a golden era of TikTok that's probably, gone past now. I think everything has its place. So, I would never say to a musician, oh, you don't need to go on social media anymore, or you don't need to, I don't know, not have an email list, whatever. I think all the bits are still there. I just think it's the bit that shifted is not having to be a slave to these algorithms. I think going deeper with an audience rather than trying to go wide, which is kind of what I've always said, to be honest. But I just feel like this battle with trying to get attention on socials it is a bit demoralizing. And so let's use it strategically, kind of get in, do the job we need to do and get out, and then nurture the audience that we actually already have.
Yeah, that's great. What about outside of music? Is there one thing you can think of that you've changed your mind about in the last couple of years?
Outside of music, as in non-musician businesses, or?
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously the advent of AI is here, so that certainly wasn't around a couple of years ago, and that just is accelerating a pace. I almost think that there's a bit of a 50-50 split with people at the moment. 50% of people are going to go deep on AI and go down that road and use it and leverage it and make money from it and all that kind of good stuff. And the other half are going to not sort of strategically repel, but just like I said, go deeper with the connections that they have built up, and want more kind of intimate, in real life settings. I think I'm in that camp.
Hopefully more people will be. How do you feel about the conversation?
It was awesome. How about you?
I feel pretty awesome about it too. It was good talking with you.
See you soon.
As an independent podcaster, your support means the world to me. You could even say I depend on it. With that in mind, here are some things you can do to help support the podcast. Follow The Unstarving Musician on your favorite podcast app, leave a review on your favorite podcast app, or shoot a review to me by email, robonzo@unstarvingmusician.com, or just share this episode with a friend. This all has a big impact on our audience growth. Visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd-sponsor to learn about the other ways of supporting the podcast, including a quick and easy online tip jar. Click, tip, done. Easy and super appreciated. You'll find many other ways to support the podcast there, including through our affiliate partners, our online merch store, and more. The music you're hearing is New Gods Part 2, the instrumental mix by yours truly. You can hear, download, and or buy the full version with vocals by yours truly at robonzo.com. If that was all too much to remember or process, just go to the show notes for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com to find links to all this and the stuff I talked about in today's episode. You can leave feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. Thanks for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.